Hello, everyone. I wanted to invite you to join the Creative Social Impact Collective. It is a community of creative-minded change makers like you that are working together to deepen their impact in the work they're doing. And as a thank you, you get a free download of the 5 steps to reimagining or imagining a new program, project, venture, or movement to bring the change that we want to see into the world today. Hope to see you there. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Art, Artists in Action. We are super excited. This is a really cool conversation. Elsie and I were talking about something, and we're like, oh, the people need to know this. Oh, hit record real quick. So we wanted to invite you into the conversation. Elsie, tell them about what we were talking about.
All right. So sometimes people throw out words, buzzwords, and more often than not, people think they have an idea, but they don't really know the depth of it. So I had a particular question. Of course, me and Kim, we go back and forth about stuff all the time. And I always want to know exactly how does this impact public health? Because she talks about everything basically is a public health issue. So my question was, how do the arts give people agency over their narrative?
Well, first of all, let me tell you how I'm gonna take agency over my name.
Okay.
It ain't Kim.
Kimberlee, I apologize.
Agency, right? So agency is a really interesting word, right? So even though I'm in the field, there's always, with anything like new words that come up and you're like, what's that? So agency for me, kind of like what I said, is that you said something to me. I heard it and was like, I don't think that's right for me, right? I have agency to say to you, that's not right for me.
Gotcha.
This is what I prefer, right? So I don't know, how would you define like what I'm talking about? Because I'm just saying how it makes sense to me.
It comes back to, I guess we're going to use another buzz term, self-efficacy, the confidence, the wherewithal to be like, wait a minute, this is how I want to actually engage with that. This is how I believe in what I'm saying to be my truth. This also directly connects to when people talk about controlling the narrative. You'll always hear, especially when it comes to things that are happening in the media, how somebody's being portrayed like, wait a minute, we need to take back our narrative. So it's very much so similarly aligned.
That narrative word, that's another word, right?
That word.
So that's interesting, right? Because you talked about self-efficacy and confidence. One thing that you tell me a lot as an educator, that there's always opportunity, but there's not always access to that opportunity. So people really have it, right? And so when I think about self-efficacy being confidence, you can teach me something and I can learn it, but do I have access and do I have the confidence to then use what you taught me, right? Like, isn't that interesting? Like,
yeah, it's opportunity versus access. And sometimes people think that, oh, well, because we gave them all the tools, they should have the confidence doing it. And of course, you throw the word should in there, then all of a sudden it's going to go haywire in the first place, because now you acting that have a deficit somewhere.
I do my best not to use that word should.
Absolutely.
But you were asking a question about, so you said narrative, you said arts, you said agency. Ask me your question again.
How do the arts give people agency over their own narrative?
Dang. So just from where I sit, thinking about the role of the arts in my space as an artist, as a person, as a consumer, thinking about culture, thinking about all that stuff. Sometimes it's just me being me, right? So my background, I'm Caribbean. I was born in another country. I was raised here. And sometimes we don't think of what we be as the arts, but it is our culture. So you think about reggae music, dance hall music. Growing up, that's just what we listen to, is just, and somebody else not from where we're from, like, ooh, that's the arts. I'm like, the arts what? That's just what we play when we go to parties, and this just
No, no,
what we
and I
are,
get
right?
that. I get that. I get that. I mean, and when we, from me on the outside looking in, when I think about art, sometimes having, and like we go back to we said before, sometimes having the agency is very far and few in between for some people. They're limited in the way that they actually can express themselves through words. So
Mhm.
sometimes they'll do it through visual art. And if you think about a visual artist, somebody who is trying to capture a moment, capture their feeling, capture that thing. People always say a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So visual artists, I think, can do that and tap into that in a particular way because sometimes they don't have the vocal or the words for agency in that. Would you agree with something like that?
I'm a performer, first of all,
Okay.
but I appreciate the visuals. Um, what I find, especially working with young people, let's say, they feel what they feel, but they may not always have the words. And you use the word narrative. Narrative, we think about like telling stories, but your story, sometimes you may not have all the words, but you know the moves, right? You know what, if I know a question I used to ask my folks is like, what does that look like? We talk about
Mm,
thoughts and feelings and so forth. Like, what does it look like? And they may be able to draw a picture that says what it looks like. That's a creative
I
practice. That
got
is
you.
artistic practice. As a performer, and an entertainer, I may be able to demonstrate who I am, where I come from, what I need in a way that just talking is kind of weird. But the arts and artists have an amazing way to not only tell their own story, but tell the story of their community, tell the story of the people that they come from, project a reflection and a vision of what they want, what they need, what's possible. So that's what I think that would be my
I
answer
got
to
you.
your
I
question.
got you. And it actually leans into one of the things that I'm a big fan of, huge fan of, and part of this community as well, spoken word, where everything that you wish you could say, sometimes it's like you got to play a song because they're going to say the thing that you want to say because you don't have the words. You can't come up with it, but there's a feeling associated with it. And I think the cool part about spoken word, it's verse, it's timing, it's meter, it's all of the things. And I think growing up the way I know you did and the way I did, being a hip hop head, listening to some of the things that bring about real nitty gritty. This is in your face, but truly, this is what I'm growing up in. This is that space that I'm in. I think sometimes we take for granted the power of spoken word, which is in essence the nature of hip hop and storytelling. And I think that allows people to share their stories in a way that is not as invasive. Sit on the couch type, let's have this conversation. Oh, put a beat to it, and I bet you I can tell you everything about my life.
And I bet you feel it, right?
Right.
Everybody knows when a beat drop,
Oh,
it's going, you're
it's
gonna feel
coming. You
something.
got
You
to
hear
come with it.
somebody say something in it, you are listening to somebody else's thing, you like, word, that's what's up. But you know what? The thing I think about, as you say, the way we grew up, I think about like young folks out there now, right? That is a reflection of where they are, their experience. And people our age and our elders didn't understand us. But I'm curious, right? Like, and I want you in the comments, um, what does your music, your storytelling, what does it say about you? And does it resonate with you? And does it say what you want it to say about you? So drop that in the comments. I want to see what that's about.
Oh, I love lyrics. I'm a lyricist. I love really dissecting lyrics. And every time we get into conversations like this, the first thing that comes to my mind is if I'm hearing something, is somebody killing me softly with their song? I know that's, all cliche. We're Brandon Flack / Fuji's, thank you, Lauryn Hill. But is somebody telling your story to everyone? And if so, how is that impacting how you feel, how you move? And I think sometimes, of course, me being the educator, I want to go back and ask you, okay, what was the point of the story? What was the thing that they were trying to tell you? Could you paint a picture of what this is and how can you use that? So that being said, how can people use what we're talking about, agency, self-efficacy? How can we use that to help people address their public health?
That's
Like
important.
their
No,
public health,
that's important, right? And so as you bring in public health, most people still kind of don't really know what public health is.
right?
People are hearing it more because of COVID and vaccines and masks and so forth. But really, public health is prevention, is a prevention level of health, right? Whereas we know about medicine, and medicine is about treatment of like a disease state. Like public health thinks about population level. How do we get a group of people to be at optimal health? Remembering health is about not just physical health, but it's mind, body, spirit, financial, intellectual, all of that, right? Is about,
Isn't that well-being and
yeah,
being well?
it is well-being and
And
being
being
well.
well.
So we think about like racism as a public health issue, and we think about, and why do we pick racism to be our pillar for this? Because when you think about people of color in this world, not just in the US, because racism is a public health issue, it has exasperated other public health issues.
Brings it to the forefront a lot faster when you look at what the research says about numbers. You'll hear disparity, you'll hear disaggregated data, and they
Well, that's a
talk
fancy
about
word. Y'all heard
have to
him?
drop that one, have to drop that one. But when they talk about the amount of occurrences of something happening, they give a percentage. The question then you have to ask is, well, in the whole populace of that community and the whole populace of that area, what does that number look like? How does that really impact? And when people talk to a public health person about it, they'll just basically tell you that's a problem. That's a huge problem. And don't believe the hype. You really have to look at the bigness of what we're talking about. Whereas somebody saying either get vaccinated or not, of course, that choice is yours. But if coughing on one person could affect them, and then they go out and do it, and then they go out in a room and they just keep doing it, how does that impact the room? Forget the rest of the space. How does that one cough impact the room? Now, if you talk about how that person was a person of color and they don't have central air, they don't have more than one window in their house, but we still talk about the same person going into the room and coughing and everybody's still in there. How does that impact them as opposed to the person who was coughing in another room, not a person of color, multiple windows, multiple ways to actually ventilate the air? That's, trying to give you a small image of what I'm talking about, but that's the nature of how you can really get to the bottom of, oh, shoot, how many Black people in this community live in this particular space that have that issue? And I think that that's one of the stickier situations that lead into another host of systemic things, but we are starting to become more aware of it. And again, going back to art, if I asked a kid to draw a picture of their house and you just saw one window, you would think it's normal, unless you understood that that's the only thing they got.
So that's really, oh my gosh, that's really huge, right? So we talk about like what the arts can do. So let's kind of round out our conversation there.
Right.
What can the arts do? So we talked about agency, we talked about narrative, we talked about public health, we talked about racism, the things like all of that. Like, so you go, and then I'll think about mine while you're going, and then I'll say my part.
I got you. To me, it's all about understanding how somebody can find a way to find their voice and having the confidence in it to be able to say that this is what's affecting me. And this is how I'm using my platform, my art, my thing that I'm very good at to communicate a message. Because sometimes my picture, my painting, my poetry, my song of choice can say the things that truly to me are not readily sayable. So if I can choose a platform to get my point across to let people know either A, I'm hurting, or B, I'm doing well, and this is how I'm thriving and striving because these are the outlets that I have to share my voice with the world, then I know that I'm in a better place. And I know that art can actually do that for the communication piece. And that does impact somebody's version of being well.
Yeah. So taking what you said, person to person, and multiply it to a community of people. And what I realized too, if there is art going on, it brings people together. It brings people together to see, like, oh, so and so's doing that. I can do that. Or I need to tell somebody that this is happening and they can do it. Maybe it's not my thing, but now I know about it. And people are now aware that other people are experiencing something that either they're experiencing that they may not know. Because, folks, honestly, I would say, due to like racism and colonialism, all that stuff, we have been taught as people not to speak, not to share. That's business that is kept quiet. You just keep moving. But how do we create change if no one is saying there's a problem? Or the people that's saying is a problem are only looking at numbers, and numbers don't tell a story. But what if you can bring something in that brings people together to have agency and self-efficacy, to say there's something wrong and we want something better? This is what's happening from our voice. That's what I think the arts can do and has been doing for a long time. So this has been a really, really awesome conversation. There's so much more to talk about, but we want to hear from you. So make sure you put it in the comments. Make sure you already have subscribed to our channel. Make sure that you like it, share it, and tell your homies, drop their voice. Because we honestly, we want to hear your voice, because this is just us talking and chopping it up about stuff, but we want to hear what you all have to say. So, and don't forget, if you want more information about what this is, check out the link in the comments that has resources to the University of Florida Center for Arts and Medicine, resources, tools, and research and examples of what this looks like on the ground, just so you can get a better idea of what this is, right? So, Elsie.
And specifically, when you look for these and you look at this particular conversation, there's a couple of specific ones we're going to point out to you so we can actually help you land that plane a little bit better. Well, that's our time. We appreciate you as always. And until next time, be easy.